Turns out not all's fair in love and war, as the government bans the use of pyrotechnics at protests. Penalties of up to £1,000 could be handed out to people who set off flares and fireworks, while demonstrators could face jail time for refusing to remove face coverings. The government will also crack down on people clambering on war memorials, which could carry a prison sentence of up to 3 months. Home Office Minister Tom Tugendhat justified the crackdown by saying tolerating such actions would be radicalising in itself.
Now, the right to protest is fundamental to our democracy, but where we see people hurling racist abuse, desecrating national memorials of great significance to our country, or taking flares to marches in order to cause disruption and fear, the only reasonable response is outrage and disgust.
I loosely know Tom Tugendhat. I think he's very measured, very reasonable, and I completely agree with him on this.
Yeah.
The right to protest, absolutely, we should have that. But that doesn't mean we can go out and hurl racist abuse at Jewish people, black people, brown people, whatever, Islamophobia. None of that can be allowed to happen. Covering your face and going out and being able to commit crimes and say hateful things but be able to be hidden, that cannot be allowed. And then throwing fireworks at the police officers and oh, but we bought it from the shop, you're allowed to buy fireworks.
Not already, you'd think that would already be illegal? The idea to set off fireworks and flares, I find extraordinary. In fact, you know, what is interesting at the moment, just hearing this, is if you look at the amount of anti-Semitism that's gone on these marches recently, and not just people shouting stuff, not a little aside remark, people with ready-made banners carrying the most horrific and offensive abuse. And nothing has happened. And the police kind of use this get out of, you know, it's best, you know, for safety to try and track it afterwards. I'm sorry, that's not really going to be good enough.
No.
Because we've seen it on an industrial scale in the last few weeks, and it's being given a free pass.
And it really is still going on. So my partner was outside the BBC for a programme last night, and there was a very, very aggressive mob there, and he challenged them. He challenged 10 people in that mob to condemn Hamas, and he challenged them to say that the hostages should be freed, and not one of them would do so.
And as I understand it, that was BBC staff. Those were the people staging that pro-Palestine protest. So extraordinary. But, you know, I agree with this idea that, you know, people sort of with malintent, some of these demonstrators wearing a mask, something has to be done about this. But it's going to cause a world of problems, because a lot of the people go on that mask are women wearing burqas and things like that. So what are the police going to do? Start arresting them? If they do, there'll be hell to pay. It's in principle, it's a good law. In reality, I think it's going to be very difficult to enforce, and I see that the punishment is a massive 1 month behind bars or a £1,000 fine. Most of them will get.
But it shouldn't be kept.
Most of them will get off with a couple of £100.
Whatever the burqa rule, whatever you say about that. Sorry, if you're on a protest and there is potential for something to really turn badly, it doesn't matter what religion you are, what faith. Then I'm sorry, you need to be able to be identified.
I think it's a blanket
I don't care about your
going
religious
to work.
No.
It's not going to work.
That's my concern about this. Is not the sort of the ideology behind it. It's the practicalities of it.
Yeah, well, it will work if you're very clear that if you're in a public protest, you don't get to wear face masks or any kind of face covering. That is just simple as that, you know. No exceptions. No, oh dear, I've got some kind of lurgy, so I'm covering my face. Well, if you've got a lurgy, stay at home. Don't be out on the march.
Yeah, but what are the police going to do? The police are standing by, letting them chant jihad and from the river to the sea.
Arresting.
Anyway. And there's not, as you and I have witnessed, there's not that many coppers. There's 300,000 marches, ththousands of them without with masks on.
In that case, the whole march will have to be banned.
I'm with you, except it won't work.
Last night on the talk, Penny Smith did make a good point about some people wearing face masks. If during the Iranian anti-Iran protests, and people are wearing their face masks so they can't be identified by the Iranian special police, so that their families don't get targeted.
I get that.
Yeah, that is going to happen sometimes.
Yeah.
But when you and I went on some of these pro-Palestine marches, we were seeing even kids dressed like little Hamas soldiers with the green.
That was really...
that cannot be allowed.
And I completely agree with your point, Ian, about fireworks. It seems extraordinary that wouldn't have already been legal.
I thought that's already to let a firework off the crowd.
You know,
is
when
that
you
not a massive offence?
If you want to have, you know, a genuine firework display, there are so many forms and
wait till November the 5th
to fill in. So it seems absolutely bizarre. And also, even a bit worried about the statue thing, because they're saying you can't climb on a war memorial, but you can climb on other types of statues, and you're going to get into all this sort of people saying, well, where does it say that this is a war memorial? If it's a statue of a soldier,
is that
a war
memorial? On any statues? I mean, why are we allowing? They're not climbing frames. You want to go on a climbing frame?
But then are you going to arrest people at Trafalgar Square climbing on the
protest,
on the
not the Cirque du Soleil. I mean, what are they trying to do there? For goodness sake. You don't need fireworks, you don't need climbing abilities, you don't need any of this stuff.
It's supposed to be a public protest as well. It's the whole point.
Indeed.
Show who you are.
Absolutely right.
God.
Now, staying with crime now, some truly shocking CCTV footage has been released by the Co-op, showing a machete-wielding gang raiding one of their stores. The group of masked men jump over the counter, holding their weapons, and grab packs of vapes and cigarettes. The incident is part of what's being described as a shop crime tsunami. As last year, the Co-op saw a 44% increase in theft, abuse and attacks on staff. Meanwhile, 2 in 5 criminals detained by store security staff end up walking away scot-free. Paul Gerard, the Co-op's Director of Public Affairs, told TalkTV that it all comes down to poor policing.
What you're seeing there is the result of 8, 9, 10 years of effective decriminalisation of retail crime by the police. The police in the first half of last year weren't attending in 70-80% of incidents that we reported. So I'm afraid what you're seeing is a very common experience of far too many Co-op colleagues and retail workers.
I sense this goes beyond... I don't think there's any bobbies on the beat sitting in a police car going, we won't bother attending that. You know, they're listening to their paymasters, and their paymasters are listening to the Home Office, and somewhere along the line, the crime of shoplifting, which, you know, when I was a kid was a very serious offence, has been reduced. And they've, along with many other crimes, it's been earmarked. You know, we no longer treat this as, this is not a category 1 or whatever they call it. You won't get a 999 response to some shoplifting. I understand, you know, if somebody's nicked a Bazooka Joe out of the newsagents, the idea, one for the kids there, the idea that you're going to somehow send, 17 police cars for it, I get that. However, when this is now industrial scale stuff, this is completely off the charts. And we're now talking about almost organised crime getting involved in this. This is, and by the way, you know, this idea that, you know, poor people who haven't got much money are having to do it for their... That's not poor people we saw in that CCTV. But these are hardened criminals.
But Ian, you're right in that there was a piece of legislation, or rather a piece of judgment that was given to the courts to say, you know, if you find somebody guilty of shoplifting, it's almost like a parking ticket. You get a ticket and a fine. You know, there's nothing else. So that has definitely encouraged this. Plus the fact that these gangs know that there's going to be no police response. And it's not, you know, you said it's almost like there are gangs. There are now gangs. The retailers have proven that there are gangs who almost have slaves, who they, you know, sort of modern slavery. They have households full of people who they then send out, particularly young people and women, not this type of thing, when they try to shoplift without being caught, rather than this type of thing. And bear in mind, Chris Philp, when he was minister, said that shopkeepers and people who work in shops should tackle the shoplifters.
Listen,
you know, these people on £11 an hour should be tackling that.
I hear what you're saying, but I don't think this is down to the police. I think it's down to the shops themselves. Places like Co-op, Tesco, Sainsbury's, they are making billions of pounds of profit each year. Hire some proper security. Hire 5 or 6 actual ex-Marines, ex-Army guys, people like actually proper coppers, ex-coppers who know how to stop criminals, who are going to be paid £100,000 a year, and they will do the job. I go into these shops and I see a 60-year-old guy who stood there behind the desk like this. He's not going to stop anyone. He's not there to stop anyone. He's there to look around.
That's a really good point, actually. I love that point because of the scale of the profits they make. I do think, no one has ever said that before in any of the debates I've been in, but it's a really legitimate thing to say they do have some responsibility for their security, just like places like Cartier have locked doors and guys on the door, and they're not letting those scroots in because the value of what could be stolen is so enormous. So if this is happening on an industrial scale, then the value of it gradually creeps up. So hire proper people.
Yeah, they really should. But this is, these figures are extraordinary. This is in 2023. New figures that revealed a 44% increase in theft, abuse and attacks on shop staff, up to a record 336,270 at Co-op stores alone. That's extraordinary.
It's unbelievable.
You know, that's massive amount, 1/3 of a million And therefore, I agree with you, JJ. It's a really good idea. The shops should take on a bit more responsibility themselves. But it's quite clear this is another of these crimes that our useless police have decided is beneath them.
But just going back to JJ's point, Tesco, I was just checking the figures. Tesco, the boss of Tesco, who wrote an op-ed article in a newspaper recently about shoplifting, said that they have invested £44 million over the last 4 years on security measures like door access systems, protection screens and digital radios. I can't really see how a digital radio and a protection screen, that was more for COVID, as far as I can remember. Exactly. And 44 million over 4 years for Tesco.
And how's that working out for you? Not very well,
the biggest retailers, Tesco, Sainsbury's and Co, they all put money together for this special programme where they can have CCTV cameras, they can identify people, they can send the footage straight to the police. It cost them like £15 million totally, from John Lewis, Tesco, all the people together. They're making billions of pounds every year. They can put in a bit more cash than that.